I have been in love with God since I was 6. My childish imagination was captivated by how to console him. So one day, in utter frustration, I said to my mother, "But Mama, I want to touch God." "You want to touch God, Catherine? Come here. Come. Put your hand in mine. Now, my darling, now you are touching God." I never forgot that. And I would spend the rest of my life trying to touch God by touching people. I was just 15. He was 7 years older. Boris was dashing. An air of mystery and excitement just emanated from him, and I fell madly in love. We stood before the priest, and as the wedding ceremony came to an end, he placed the golden crowns upon our head. We were husband and wife, the crowns a symbol of the love and respect we should have for each other. I was wearing pearls that day. They were one of Boris's wedding presents to me. Pearls, someone told me, symbolized tears. And a shadow fell across my heart. On June 28, 1914, an assassin's bullet killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in the streets of Sarajevo. This single shot ripped through the fabric of peace in Europe, and within weeks Russia had declared war on Germany, and my life that had promised to be one of comfort and ease was spinning to destruction. Boris took a commission in the army and left for the front at Minsk. I was all alone. I didn't know what to do. Impulsive, I followed him, volunteering to work as a nurse, but I was just a girl. The reality of war crashed in around me. Men coming to me screaming with pain, their bodies bloody, maimed beyond recognition, and a fear like I had never known, always crouching in the corners of my mind. And then there was Nicholas. I met Nicholas at the front. He was one of the wounded officers, and being a nurse, I took care of him, so we became friends. And then we fell in love. You see, Nicholas was gentle to me in a way that Boris had never tried to be. I loved him. For 20 years, I would dream that this man would come and rescue me from everything. But he never did. He never did. Couldn't. In the end, the war in Russia just seemed to dissolve like smoke. The communists that had quietly been infiltrating the cities now moved into the army, and they said to the men, hungry and despairing, "Go home. Look, take the land from the owners. You deserve it." Well, it made sense to men tired of war. But it wrought chaos. Trains were not running, food was scarce, killing had become such a habit, the corpses littered the streets, turning the cities of Russia into morgues. Boris and I were reunited in our apartment in Petrograd. It had once been luxurious. Now, it was in shambles. At midnight, October 25th, 1917, Red Guards stormed through the streets of Petrograd, seizing control of all government offices. Within days, a proclamation abolished all class distinction and private ownership. Bullets shattered our apartment windows. Boris and I decided to flee Petrograd, hoping to find sanctuary in our estate in Finland. Oh, Kiskila. Our estate had been one of Boris's wedding presents to me. It was a graceful house built high on a hill overlooking a valley of birch trees. I had called it Merilaki, the seagull. When we arrived, I noticed people running down the hill to greet us. Friends? No. As I got closer, I saw they were wearing red armbands. Communists. We were trapped. They held a trial immediately. Boris and I were found guilty of being enemies of the state and oppressors of the people simply because we were rich. It was decided it would be more amusing to have us die of starvation. So we were locked in the house with no food and just a bit of water. It's interesting, you know. There's no pain in starving at first. In fact, you feel good. Your head clears. You think logically. You feel like you could go on living without food. But then slowly, your body begins to swell. Your hair and your teeth fall out. And there is a pain in your stomach like a knife. And it is with you, always. Boris and I lived like this for 3 months, daily tormented by our captors. And thoughts of suicide. Yes, thoughts of suicide haunted me. One night, as we sat huddled by the dying embers of our fire, my soul cried out, "My God, if you save me from this, I will give you my life." I fell into a sort of faint after that. I don't know for how long. When I awoke, I was looking into the kindly face of an officer. He was the captain of the White Finnish Army. They had just rescued Kiskila from the communists. Boris and I were safe. We were unable to walk, so they carried us out into the cool, fresh air. The villagers were all lined up in front of the house. The captain came up to Boris and asked if he would please point out the person who had condemned us to die of starvation. The villagers were twitching with anxiety. This meant death for them. The tables were turned now. I watched Boris. He was absolutely serene. He looked right at the man who had condemned us to die and said, "I can't remember." Forgiveness is a grace, and it is given. Mercy had just been given to us. God had saved us. Could we give anything but mercy in return?
At that time, when the communist revolution took over and her class were cast down, and she was really in a prison and she was being starved to death, she recounts her desperation in prayer before God, and she said, "If you let me live, I will give my life to the poor, in the service of the poor." And I think that was a promise that she made and that she knew she had to keep. It made all the difference in everything that followed.
Love was the only thing. She saw that so clearly. And love encompassed more than just this romantic notion of feeling good. Love was self-sacrifice, love was forgiveness, love was mercy, love was reaching outside of yourself to help other people.
There was no division of this is mundane stuff and this is spiritual stuff. It was all combined into a whole, where life was a whole, beautiful, wonderful thing to be lived out, and an adventure and exciting. That's what she really imparted to people.
Well, she had an extraordinary love for the poor, but not just the materially poor. As time went on, she saw the rich poor, the psychologically poor, the neurotic poor, we're all poor in different ways. And so her concept of the poor was very, very broad.
Catherine took me on like a personal challenge. At the time, I weighed 335 pounds, and that was a lot of despair. It represented my despair and my anguish. She used this very obvious thing of my obesity to pierce right through. Let's just talk about it right at the beginning, honey, because nobody weighs 335 pounds because they eat too much. It's because there's most of that weight is unshed tears, and she knew that. And so she met me there, and then she loved me. That's all. She loved me. And she believed in me, and she saw something in me that was worth keeping.
That's kind of Catherine's legacy, is that everyone is a child of God. Everyone is made to be loved, and try and love every person. Try and love God back by serving other people in humble service, and accept pain. Don't run away from pain.